Schuman, and he will talk about trees in the news.
Thanks, Brian. This is a segment that we added within the year, in part because of the growing recognition of the importance of trees around the globe, and all of the different ways that people are sort of getting a better understanding of their importance. So a lot of news stories, including um, sad news like trees dying off, but also kind of really interesting, fun news like France's new national park, which we did in the last webinar. This time, there's some new science studies that are trying to understand how trees might help fight climate change. And so these links should be popping up in the chat, so you can read these stories in full for yourself. But basically, um, this is highlighting the importance of how trees take carbon from the atmosphere and store it in wood and soil. And you know, many entities around the world are embracing tree planting efforts to fight climate change. So this is great news, pledging to restore forests over a large part of the globe. Some plans include, conservation or restoring, hundreds of millions of trees in the next decade. This is really kind of exciting. So scientists have kind of set out to understand, that yes, we know that new trees and forests can help cool the planet, but how effective are these efforts to implement forest-based solutions? So the science has gone and tried to measure and quantify how well these efforts are working. So two papers have come out this week, published in Science magazine, and one study quantifies how much carbon might be absorbed globally by allowing forests cleared for farming or other purposes to regrow. And the other study calculates how much carbon could be pulled out of the atmosphere and sequestered by forests in just the United States if they were fully stocked with newly planted trees. And their summary is each strategy has promise, but they also face perils. A colleague of mine at UMBC, Matt Fagan, I didn't know he was going to be quoted when I found this article, but Matt's a good guy, so I had to grab a quote here for him. Natural regrowth is not going to save the planet, unfortunately. The young forests are easier to cut down or burn than old ones. Is apparently one of the perils that this approach faces. But one of the researchers in one of the papers, the lead researcher, Susan Cook Patton of the Nature Conservancy, says planting trees might make some sense in some places, but adding trees in fire-prone areas could increase fire risk for everybody, humans, animals, and other trees, especially as climate continues to warm. So it's important that this work is going on, but clearly we need to keep studying the subject as time goes forward. Next slide. So this was in another story that I found on BBC.com. Norway has basically awarded a very substantial sum of money to work with Earth observation specialists to access their imaging expertise, covering all the world's tropical forests. And you can see the area illustrated on this graphic that I pulled from the story, covering Mexico, all the way down most of South America, large portions of Africa, Madagascar, India, and Southeast Asia as well. So it's a huge investment to make these data freely available, so that anybody can monitor and study how trees are faring in their area or across the whole region. So there's a number of links there where you can check this data out and read up more on who's contributing what to this effort. But again, an important illustration of how much we need to know about what's going on with the world's tropical forests and forests everywhere. This next slide is from the BBC story, and it basically illustrates the kinds of peril that these forested areas can be faced with. If we can get this to go, there we go. Basically, you'll see a good part of the past 5 years illustrated here with high resolution satellite data. Not during the rainy season. You'll notice there are gaps in the record, but you'll see roads go into forested areas, and then basically the underlying story is once the roads go in, the trees come out. And this area of the Amazon rainforest, kind of north of the Bolivian border, is a just being, well, logged extensively just in the past few years. And so probably the initial benefit is the trees themselves for whoever's doing the logging, but then the land becomes exposed for farming and potentially erosion of its what used to be forested soils during the rainy season. So there's a lot of consequences illustrated in just this few years of planet data. But I think it's a kind of striking illustration of how much impact deforestation can have in what was an extensively forested area in this part of the Amazon. So that just brings home I think the underlying part of the story, which is we're all in this together. And even though you and I may never get to the Amazon, what's happening there is going to impact us here. So just an illustration of the kind of data that Planet is able to put out from its constellation of small sats that are orbiting us right now and producing amazing imagery and enabling us to see what's going on in places that we certainly nowadays would have no chance of traveling to do on the ground measurements. So kind of one of the underlying things about NASA is being able to see places around the Earth and also through the solar system and elsewhere, and what's happening there with our remote sensing. Thanks, Brian. Let's jump ahead to the last slide. And another element of all this is there was a NOVA program, Can We Cool the Planet, featuring one of the researchers that we know from NASA Goddard. And if we're lucky, we can play the promo for this. And again, the links should be in the chat, and you should be able to play this full episode when you've got time to sit through the extended cut, if you will. And let's see.
It's thinking.
Yes.
There we go.
There we go. The internet can be a little slower than we'd like.
Rising temperatures.
We need to reduce the heating effect.
Can we stop them?
Every year, the damages are worse.
From going too far. Now, help may be on the horizon.
It's going to be revolutionary.
New technologies that could turn down the thermostat.
It's like science fiction.
But are they enough? Can we cool the planet on Nova?
So some of the things that were discussed there were
This month in Passport.
ground and space-based measurements of trees, including the JEDI instrument on the International Space Station. And so it just, again, highlights the importance of studying trees around the globe.